convoy of 5 UN cars contains a team of weapons inspectors embarking on an exercise that may bring the West into this civil war. Their departure follows 2 days of negotiations on the ground by the UN's Angela Kane.
What do you think the weapons inspectors are going to achieve today?
No response, but the delay of in total 5 days will make it more difficult for them to establish whether Syria gassed its own people. But if they do, the question then is, how will the West respond?
Is it even possible there could be some kind of military strike against Syria this week?
I'm not going to rule anything in or out. I'm not going to speculate about that in public. Is it possible to act on chemical weapons? Is it possible to respond to chemical weapons without complete unity on the UN Security Council? I would argue, yes, it is.
The district of Zamalka is a wasteland full of snipers. Both sides supposedly called a ceasefire, but there are reports today that the inspectors have been targeted by gunfire, which could intimidate and hamper them in getting to work. It's already feared that after 5 days of government forces pounding the site, evidence may be hard to gather.
Every hour counts. We cannot afford any more delays. We have all seen the horrifying images on our television screens and through social media. Clearly, this was a major and terrible incident. We owe it to the families of the victim to act. All those in Syria have a stake in finding out the truth. The whole world should be concerned about any threat or use of chemical weapons.
If inspectors do find anything, the regime has provided an alternative scenario for where it came from. State TV has shown journalists a stash of chemicals in underground rooms in the Damascus suburb of Jobar, which they say belong to the rebels. But that hasn't convinced the French foreign minister, who is now considering his country's response.
The decision hasn't been taken yet. What is now clear, thanks to converging accounts, is what I call a chemical massacre. What's also certain is that this massacre originates from Bashar al-Assad's regime. There has to be a proportionate reaction to act with determination and calm, and that is what will be decided in the coming days.
Reporters also met a handful of government soldiers in hospital beds who claimed to be victims of a rebel chemical attack. If this is a pantomime, Russia is singing along, warning Washington not to do what it did in Iraq over Saddam's apparent weapons of mass destruction.
If the inspectors actually going today have the right equipment with them, and if they can prove by identifying certain either carriers or certain elements that only the regime will have, that will be further evidence, at least to get some kind of legal way of moving against President Assad.
Indeed, evidence may well be found. Angela Kane's inspectors need to get as close as possible to the point of detonation and examine soil samples and human tissue. To explain what happened here, the inspectors have a sombre and difficult task ahead. The options facing Western leaders are equally grim. Jason Farrell, Sky News.